On my birthday, my daughter gave me a bottle of whiskey and said with a smile, "Just don't choke on it." That same evening, I received a message from my granddaughter. "Grandma, don't drink the whiskey my mom gave you. She told me everything. So the next time my daughter came to visit me, I poured her a glass of that whiskey. She drank and turned pale. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." The words slid under my skin like a cold needle. I turned the bottle in my hands, letting the late afternoon sun catch the glass. Amber gleamed as if it could bless a day already frayed at the edges. The bow was too perfect, the paper too costly, the smile too practiced. "Just a little something special, Mom," Claire said, voice warm enough to pass a quick inspection. "You deserve the best." I set the bottle in the middle of the patio table and felt my heartbeat knock once against my ribs. It was July 4th, 3:30 p.m. Arizona heat pressing down on everything, the dry air carrying the smell of mesquite from someone's grill. I'd lined up the chairs the way Robert liked them, just so, not because he'd be here to notice, but because my hands still remembered what home asked of them. "Smells great." "Grandma!" Emma said, bursting through the gate ahead of everyone with a tangle of elbows and knees. 14 and growing like a desert willow that found the right patch of shade. She crashed into my chest and squeezed. For a second, the world sorted itself out. "Only the best for you," I told her, and meant it. Michael came next with a gift bag and that careful accountant's smile that always scanned me for cracks before he relaxed. "You set everything up perfectly," he said. "Looks happy." That was the plan. The grill snapped and muttered, blue tongues tasting the air, paper plates in a fan, Robert's blue ceramic dishes. Today was special enough for them, even if that made no sense to anyone else. Tom parked a casserole like a seasoned stagehand, and for a while we managed normal. Salad talk, weather talk, baseball chatter from Emma, as she inhaled chicken like she'd trained for it. Claire kept checking the bottle with the side of her eyes, the way a gambler checks a pocket. She laughed when other people laughed, said the right things in the right places, and never asked me anything that mattered. "Mom," she said at last, leaning closer so no one else would hear. "Make sure you open it later when you can really enjoy it. Alone." Enjoy? I held her gaze just long enough to make her look away. "Maybe we'll have a toast after cake," I said. She smiled, but something in her shoulders went tight for a breath before she relaxed again. At the table, Emma asked me to tell the bridge story, the one where 2 feet of rain tried to erase a county road in a single night. I told it because she wanted it, because she needed me to still be the woman who fixed things. I kept it lean. No romance in rebar, just loads, spans, fatigue. The arithmetic of not letting strangers die on your watch. Emma's eyes shone. Claire's phone lit up her palm. "Saved thousands," Emma said, awe softening her vowels. "Did my job?" I said. "We solve problems before they break." Claire's jaw pinched at that. An almost invisible wince she smoothed into a grin as Tom asked for seconds. The bottle sat between us like an expensive dare, catching chips of sun and throwing them in thin rainbows across the cloth. "Can I have a tiny sip on your birthday?" Emma asked, pointing at the glass monument. "Not yet," I said, and felt the table exhale in a way no one admitted. By 8, the cars had come and gone. Hugs had been given in the driveway, promises made about next weekend and pancakes. Michael's hug lasted longer than usual. "Call me tomorrow," he said at my ear. "Please." "I'm fine," I lied, because mothers learn to do that for their sons. The house held the hush that follows celebration, a light mess where joy had been. I rinsed dishes in slow circles. The bottle waited where I'd set it, the bow napping like a smug cat. I reached for a clean glass and felt the small wobble in my hand I usually blame on age and yard work. The label winked in the kitchen light. Old enough to be serious, rich enough to mean something, and the whisper I'd tried to file away replayed itself exactly. "Don't choke on it." The word choke is not a toast. My phone buzzed. For a beat, I thought it would be a neighbor I only hear from when fireworks start early. Instead, the screen said, Emma. Grandma, don't drink that whiskey. A hum started in my ears, a little like the power stations used to sound when I was inside the fence, a little like a road you shouldn't cross. I sat down at the counter, put both feet on the floor, and typed. Why? She took too long. Teenagers never take long. The dots appeared and vanished. Then, I saw Mom put something in it in the garage from a small bottle. She told me to go inside. Please don't drink. I'm deleting this. I stood so fast the chair legs chirped against tile. The kitchen had that too bright look. Grief gives a room even before the grief earns its name. I turned the bottle under the light. Of course, I couldn't see anything. Poison doesn't wave from the window. Thank you, I wrote. You did the right thing. I'm okay. Delete and go to bed? Okay, I love you. Came back as if she were the grandmother, and I were the girl. I set the phone face down. The bottle had become a problem, and problems are what I understand. You don't argue with a bridge. You don't beg a beam. You test. You measure. You document. You act. Old training slides clicked back on in my head. Chain of custody. Sample control. No contamination. I found a clean mason jar, rinsed it twice, rinsed the funnel, dried everything with a towel that didn't smell of last night's onions. I poured a careful measure from the neck into the jar, sealed it, labeled the lid with the date and time, and took a photo of the bottle beside the jar on the counter. I boxed the jar in a small cooler with ice packs and taped the lid. Then I stood there with my hands braced on the granite while the rest of it caught up to me. My daughter, my girl who once fell asleep against my shoulder during Sunday games, had brought me a weapon wrapped like a present. I could feel Robert next to me, not as a ghost, but as a habit that never left. He would have touched the back of my arm and said my name in that way that unfroze my jaw. I took one long breath and let it out. I took another, my heart steadied to a count I could live with. I did not pour the rest down the sink, not yet. Evidence is a kind of truth, and I needed it to talk for me when hands and voices started lying. I slept badly, the way you sleep in a motel on the edge of a small town, on top of the covers, one shoe still on. At 7:30 a.m. I was showered, dressed, and looking like a woman who had errands instead of a mother who had doubts. I placed the cooler on the passenger seat and drove to Scottsdale Medical Labs, that glass and steel building that always looked like it should be studying weather from space. The receptionist didn't flinch when I said, I need to know what's in this. She handed me forms that wanted to know the name I've lived with and whether my payment would be card or check. Possible adulteration, I wrote in the box marked purpose. Beverage. A young tech with kind eyes led me to a counter that smelled like bleach and paper. We'll do a comprehensive screen, she said. Fill this out for chain of custody. We'll call when the results are ready. How long? A few hours. A few hours is how long a life can change while you hold still. I filled out each line like it was a blueprint. Time of sample, description, where it was stored, who touched it. I initialed where they told me to, printed my name neat and clear, and left my number in digits big enough for any tired afternoon to read. I carried my coffee to the waiting room and didn't drink it. I read 3 sentences of an old magazine, and none of them stuck. I watched people come and go who didn't look like they were trying to prove whether their daughter loved them. At 11:48, a door opened and my name was spoken in the kind of voice nurses use for news that fits inside numbers. We found a benzodiazepine derivative, the tech said in a small consultation room. Her tone professional, not theatrical. A printout lay between us. Peaks, valleys, a mountain range of bad intention. At a concentration that, if consumed regularly by an older adult, could cause severe respiratory depression, heart rhythm issues, falls, confusion. Over time, it could be fatal. We can't make medical determinations, but... You've told me enough, I said, and in my head, A very old piece of machinery clicked into place. Confirmed. Load path identified. Remediation plan required. Would you like copies of the full report? She asked. I'd like 3, I said. And I'd like your card. She slid both across the table without asking why. I thanked her, shook her hand, and walked out with a manila folder that felt heavier than a stack of paper should. In the elevator, surrounded by mirrors, I looked like an older woman who had gone to find out if she was crazy and learned she was not. Back home, I spread the report on the kitchen table where the gift had sat. Photographs of my family fanned around the edges. Emma at Little League with her cap crooked. Michael holding a papier-mâché volcano with 3rd graders cheering. Claire at 12, gap-toothed and shining, because we'd just finished a crooked treehouse and called it a castle. The castle had held even with our rookie joints. The girl had not. I went to the den and opened the steel box where we keep what matters. Passports, marriage license, Robert's old watch, the first savings bond we forgot to cash. I added the lab folder to the stack and turned the key. Then I pulled down the file where I saved proof that love isn't only a feeling. Tuition receipts, checks I wrote when Claire's first house needed a down payment and a cosigner. Statements from years I carried a mortgage. She couldn't. The debt consolidation we did instead of shame when her sure thing fell apart. Letters I wrote to women who still picked up the phone when I called. It wasn't anger I felt. Not exactly. It was a ledger balancing itself in front of me, numbers clicking from one side to the other, until the columns lined up and spelled a word I had avoided. Enough. At dusk, I stood in the doorway of my living room, with the lights off, and listened to small fireworks try their best in the neighborhood. Little suns bloomed over rooftops and died in polite applause. On the coffee table, the bottle, still full but now labeled by the truth, threw back a slice of spark through the window, made of the same light as the ones outside, and none of the same hope. I picked it up, careful as if it might bite, and felt how heavy glass can be when it doesn't hold celebration anymore. I was not going to drink from it, but I wasn't going to smash it either. It had a job left to do. Tomorrow I would make certain the future belonged to the child who warned me. Tonight I let the weight of the bottle teach my hand what justice should feel like. Not hot, not wild. Steady. Out in the street, someone whooped. A flare stitched a bright line across the dark. I set the bottle back in the center of the table and said to no one, and to everyone I have ever loved, we solve problems before they break. And then I began. The report lay where a birthday card should have been. Peaks and valleys marched across the paper like a seismograph of intention. Benzodiazepine derivative detected. It said in calm type, and under it the numbers that turned suspicion into structure. I made a list because lists make fear hold still. Photograph bottle from all angles, including cap. Second sample witnessed. Independent lab. Baseline checkup with my doctor. Start the ledger. At 8:05 a.m. I carried the bottle to the kitchen island and called my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. We've traded ladders for 15 years. She taught me how to coax tomatoes through a Phoenix summer. I helped her set her fence straight after a windstorm. A decent woman is a strong beam. I need you to witness something, I said. Nothing dramatic, just eyes on a pour and a signature. She was on my porch 6 minutes later in work boots and a linen shirt. I showed her the lab report without commentary, her mouth pressed flat, the way women of her generation reserve for funerals and expensive repairs. Tell me what you need, she said. I set a clean glass jar and a funnel on the counter, held up a fresh roll of tamper tape, and opened the bottle with the caution, "You save for a wasp you don't want to rouse." I poured a measured ounce into the jar. Mrs. Chen read the date and time off my stove clock and repeated them while I wrote them down. "Photograph me," I said. And she did. My hands, the tape sealing the lid, the label getting inked while the second hand swept. She signed the chain of custody form I'd printed from the first lab's website. I signed behind her. Good documentation is the opposite of drama. It's a promise you make to the future. "There's a lab near the highway," she said. "My cousin used them when a contractor blamed the paint instead of his prep." I drove there with the jar seated in a cooler, like a small, expensive passenger. The building was newer and the intake quieter. The tech behind the counter had the steady manner of someone who has seen too much and filed it all correctly. I said the same words I'd said yesterday, handed over the same ID, and checked the same boxes. "Comprehensive screen," I requested. "Please note benzodiazepine confirmation in the comments, if applicable." On the way out, I bought a single-use notebook at the pharmacy, the kind with a thick black cover and stitched binding. Spiral-bound pages can be replaced. Stitched pages make you commit. On the first line, I wrote, "July 5th, 8:41 a.m. Chain of custody. Secondary sample, witness R. Chen. Delivery to Desert Ridge Laboratories." Under it, I wrote, "No prescribed benzodiazepines." Then I called my primary care physician. The receptionist heard something in my tone and found me a slot at 2:15. "Purpose?" she asked. "Baseline health," I said. "Document alertness, reflexes, vitals. I want an up-to-date medication list in my file." Of course. I went home and made eggs I didn't taste. The house smelled like coffee and clean paper. On the den desk, I stacked files the way you stack lumber before you lay a frame. Tuition receipts, mortgage statements, home insurance premiums I'd paid while Claire got back on her feet. I added a copy of the speech I gave at her first wedding. Cheerful and full of the kind of hope that doesn't check references. I made headings in the ledger. Education, checks written, amounts, dates, housing, down payment assistance, co-signed notes, property tax bailouts, debt rescues, consolidation agreements, interest paid on her behalf, direct transfers, notes and memo lines that read like prayers, car repair, last chance, 2 weeks till bonus. Time. Weekends spent fixing what professionals should have fixed. Calls at midnight that I answered. I totaled the columns with a carpenter's care. The number landed north of $200,000. And somehow that didn't sting. Money is only a unit of measure. It wasn't the checks. It was the slope of the line. How often I said yes to hold her out of the river. How readily she learned that a hand would be there. My phone buzzed. Claire. "How was the whiskey, Mom?" I watched the typing dots add nothing of value. A younger version of me would have typed what she wanted to hear to keep the peace. The woman I am now replied, "Saving it. Want to do a proper toast when the family's together? Dots. That's nice. You deserve it. We should grab dinner this week. Just us." Just us meant alone. I turned that phrase in the light and saw all its angles. "Busy with appointments," I wrote. "I'll let you know soon." The lie wasn't a lie. It was a bridge to a place where truth would have witnesses. At 2:15, I sat on the exam table while Dr. Harrison listened to my chest and asked me to follow her finger with my eyes. "How are you sleeping?" she asked. "Badly," I said, "but that's situational." She laughed softly, then sobered. "Any new medications, dizziness, falls?" No, and no," I said. "And I'd like that in the chart. I'd like a printed medication list. It should show no benzodiazepines or sedatives prescribed." She looked at me for a long moment, the way good doctors do when they're deciding how deep to go. "Everything all right at home?" "I'm doing what I can to keep it that way." She printed the list, stamped it, and initialed the corner. "Call if you need anything," she said. And I mean anything. On the way back, I stopped at the bank and paid for a safe deposit box I hadn't used since Robert and I tucked our passports away before a trip we never took. The clerk slid a signature card across the counter. I took my time with the loops and lines. In the vault's quiet, I placed the first lab report, copies of the second intake paperwork, the new medication list, and a thumb drive with the photographs into a plain envelope labeled Evidence. Do not discard. I added the ledger's photocopies and sealed them in a second envelope. Financial ledger. Support provided 1999-2025. Back home, I printed a one-page cover sheet in block letters. Statement of concern. Personal. If anything happens to me in the next 6 months that appears uncharacteristic, please contact attorney. Name, phone, and Dr. Harrison, phone. See safe deposit box for documentation. No sedatives are prescribed to me. I do not drink alone. I put the original in the steel box. I left a copy on the refrigerator door under a magnet shaped like a hummingbird. I considered whether that was melodramatic and decided it was practical. At 5:22 p.m., Mrs. Chen texted, "My signature means something if you need it to. You have a friend." I thanked her without making a speech. At 6:03, Michael called. "Hey, you," he said. "Did you rest at all?" "A bit," I said. "I went to the doctor. Baseline stuff." "That's good," he said in the slow relief way people say "thank God" without using the words. "Emma has been quiet since yesterday. She asked if she could come mow your lawn this week. Translation: she wants to see you. Tell her yes," I said. "Tell her old grandma needs a foreman to keep standards up." He laughed, then more carefully. "Mom, if you need help with anything, I have room in my week." "I'll ask," I said. "Soon." After we hung up, I took my notebook to the patio and wrote a different kind of entry. One that wasn't numbers. Ledger of time. The Saturday mornings I said yes to drywall and no to fishing. The vacations shortened to wire money. The day she brought me a cheap scarf and said it was from a boutique and I wore it for her like it made sense. All the next times we promised each other. The page looked like a floor plan of a house I used to live in. I closed the notebook before I got sentimental. Sentimentals get blindsided. At 7:40, Desert Ridge Laboratories called. "We can confirm the presence of a benzodiazepine class compound," the technician said. "Report will be ready for pickup in the morning. We can certify it if you like." "Yes," I said. "Please certify." I wrote confirmed X2 in the notebook and drew a line under it so the eye would stop and breathe. 2 labs meant I wasn't a woman with a grudge and a guess. I was an engineer in a hard hat pointing to the same crack from 2 angles. After dinner, I traced the day forward to the moment that mattered. A confrontation without leverage is a tantrum. A confrontation with leverage is a plan. I needed drafts, not outbursts. I drafted a plain letter to Claire. "Daughter, I have samples and reports. I have counsel. Meet me at a time and place of my choosing if you want to talk like women who love the same people. If you don't, this moves forward without you. Mom." I didn't send it. The letter wasn't for her yet. It was for me. Words are easier to carry when you've set them down once. At 9:02, Emma texted, "Pancake Saturday. I can bring blueberries." "Pancake Saturday," I wrote. "Bring that appetite and your math homework. I want to see the hard problems." "Deal," she wrote. "Night, Grandma. Night, kid." Outside, the town did its summer thing. Sprinklers somewhere. A baseline leaking from a car you couldn't see. A siren far off that faded into nothing. Inside, the bottle stood where it had stood all day, haloed by lamplight like an exhibit piece. I didn't feel hunted when I looked at it anymore. I felt resourced. I opened a fresh manila folder and wrote, "Case" on the tab, because sometimes you need to name a thing what it is to carry it right. Into it went the letter I hadn't sent, a list of questions I would ask when the time came, and a bullet list titled, "What I Will Not Do." Raise my voice, beg, explain the lab reports as if they're up for debate, drink any beverage I didn't open and pour myself. Forget that a girl warned me and paid for that warning with her sleep. I added a second list titled, "What I Will Do." To bring witnesses when necessary, speak in short sentences, offer one path to decency, protect the granddaughter first. At 10:18, Claire pinged again. "Tomorrow night okay for dinner? There's a new place off Camelback Road." "Another time," I wrote. "Projects in motion." "What projects?" she sent. Ones that make things safe, I typed, then erased it and settled for, just work around the house. She sent a thumbs up a moment later, the kind of cartoon that makes conversation feel like a chore. I put my phone face down and turned the lamplight low. In the bathroom mirror, I saw what everyone sees when they love you badly. An older woman who looks like an older woman. Gray at the temples, hands marked by a lifetime of tools. But the eyes told the truth. They were not confused eyes. They were doing the math eyes. I slept better. Not well, but better. When I surfaced at dawn, a quiet I trusted sat in the room with me. The ledger lay on the nightstand, the black cover absorbing light like a good secret. I wrote before coffee. July 6th, 6:11 a.m. Resolve inventory. I am not out to ruin her. I am out to remove her hands from the levers that hurt other people. If I can do that with shame and paperwork, I will. If I must do it with witnesses, I will. If I have to do it with law, I will. I showered, dressed, and looked like a woman going to the bank again. At Desert Ridge Laboratories, the certified copy came in a folder with a blue seal I could feel with my thumb. I thanked the tech, asked for her direct line, and wrote it in the ledger with a note. Spoke clearly, confident, no drama. Small human details matter when strangers read your handwriting later. On the way home, I stopped by a liquor store with a solid reputation and bought a sealed bottle of the same age statement and general profile, not because I intended to drink it, but because sometimes a plan needs props. I put it on a high shelf in the pantry behind the flour. The switch would be a last resort option, a control in an experiment I hoped not to run. Back at the desk, I assembled everything again, the way you test a bridge twice, even if the first test holds. 2 lab reports, a medication list, a statement of concern, a ledger, photographs, witness signature. All of it sat there like steel, simple and heavy. At noon, I wrote one more letter. This one I sealed for my granddaughter, to be opened if the worst day ever arrives. I told her that good women don't let bad moments teach them the wrong lessons. I told her I was proud of her for telling the truth when it scared her. I told her I was going to fix this in a way that leaves room for the kind of future she deserves. Then I wrote the simplest sentence a girl can use as a handrail. This was not your fault. I put the letter in the safe box with the others and locked it. The click sounded like something old and sturdy agreeing with me. By evening, the house looked like a staged photograph. Nothing out of place, nothing dramatic, nothing you could point to and say, that right there is where the world turned. But the world had turned. The narrative is different when you can lay papers down and they speak for you. When Claire texted, one more time. You sure you don't want to try a sip before the weekend? I typed no and didn't decorate it. She didn't reply. I stood in the living room and practiced the words I would use when the time came, aloud and without heat, until they lived in my mouth without wobble. I have the reports. I have witnesses. You will never do this again to me or anyone. Here is the path back to being a woman. Outside, the night took shape around porch lights and the soft conversations of families that kept nothing sharper than a steak knife in their kitchens. Inside, a folder on my table held a different kind of blade, one made of dates and signatures and a steady handwriting that says, I am not guessing anymore. Tomorrow would be for memory and motive, for the slow arithmetic of how we arrived here. Tonight the ledger closed with a clean thump. The house exhaled. I set the second bottle high, placed the first behind lock and key, and turned out the lights. I slept without the shoe on. The ledger made a sound when it closed. Cloth overboard, a soft thump that felt like a sentence finishing. Numbers had shape now. The past had weight. When you stack enough proof, Memory stops being a mist and turns into lumber. April rose in my mind as if someone had pulled a cord on an old blind. The day came down in one clean sheet. A Wednesday with rain that didn't commit. The kind that freckled the diner windows and made the ketchup bottles look philosophical. Claire had chosen the place because the coffee was cheap and the booths were high. Privacy without paying for it. She started with a joke about probate, how it's the government's tip jar, then stirred sugar into her cup like she was beating a deadline. "Mom, you don't need me to tell you you're not getting younger," she said, smiling like a woman who sells warranties by calling them favors. "We should streamline things, consolidate, joint accounts. I can be a signer, just in case. No surprises for anybody." "What surprises?" I asked. She waved a hand. "You know how lawyers are. They love a complication. If you and I set it up right, the house slides over clean one day. The accounts flow where they're supposed to. Probate? We don't even give it a chance." She said we, until the word didn't mean both of us anymore. Her eyes kept going to the little pie carousel, to the door, to anything that wasn't my face. "What about your brother?" I said. "What about Emma?" "Michael will be fine," she said. "He'll appreciate it being simple." "And Emma?" "We'll make sure of college, of course." She sipped her coffee. "We can put a small college fund aside now. Symbolic. Shows intent. Symbolic." She liked that word when money was involved. She used it the way women use just when they ask for things that aren't small at all. "I have an attorney," I said. "We can talk to her." She shook her head fast. "Lawyers mess up family. You know that. Let's keep this between us. You taught me to handle things at the kitchen table." I did teach her that, and the lesson had come back wearing gloves. She took a folded paper from her purse, a list of assets she shouldn't have known the exact shape of. Accounts I hadn't talked about in years. "All I'm saying," she said, sliding it toward me, "is we should be intentional and efficient." "Where? Did you get these balances?" I asked, more curious than angry, which was a kind of betrayal, too. "You leave mail out," she said. "You're not a spy, Mom." She laughed. "I didn't. I'm just trying to keep you from getting buried in paperwork when things, you know, happen." "When they happen," I said, and the rain tapped against the glass like someone trying a locked door. She leaned in, switched from sails to sun. "I worry about you. The sleep, the blood pressure. You get dizzy sometimes." "Who told you I get dizzy?" "You told me last month," she said. And maybe I had, in the general language women use when they want company, and a complaint. She patted the paper, and for a blink the gesture looked like a hand on a coffin. "Let me help," she said, and she meant, "Let me hold the handles." I didn't give her an answer that day. I have never believed in signatures made in a hurry. We parted under an awning. She kissed my cheek in a way that felt like a camera might be watching. That conversation had gone into the ledger now, not as a number, but as a slope. April was where the angle changed. Once you see a line break, you can't unsee it. Back in the present, I sat at my kitchen table with the lab reports to my left and the ledger on my right. In the middle lay a small pile of strays, index cards with notes from years no one else cared to remember. An old email I'd printed when Claire asked for a bridge loan and promised a repayment date with a confidence that had aged badly. A photo of the treehouse we'd called a castle. I put the photo at the very bottom. Memory deserves a foundation, not an argument. I started a new page in the notebook. April diner talk, motive map, avoid probate, speed talk, control, joint accounts, access, symbolic college fund, optics, kitchen table not attorney, no paper trail, Health prodding, narrative seeding. Under narrative seating, I wrote the sentence that made my jaw square itself. If I die naturally, her hands are cleaner on paper. I went to the den and opened the steel box again. Not because I needed anything from it, but because I needed the ritual. Robert used to ground himself by organizing his toolbox the same way every Sunday. I ground myself by checking that the lock still caught. The click told me it did. On the shelf above the box sat Robert's watch next to a bowl of mismatched screws. I touched the watch and then the bowl, as if I were checking 2 pulse points on the same body. You'd have seen through her faster. I told the watch, which is to say I told myself. The phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Can I bring soup tonight? No occasion. Just soup. Yes, I wrote. Bring Emma and her appetite. Then after a beat, and no talk about April unless I start. Copy that. He answered and added a heart he would have denied sending if teased. I used the hours before the soup to finish the paperwork April had started. I printed the email Claire had sent after the diner. Let's keep momentum on the estate plan, Mom. No need to overcomplicate. I printed my reply. I'll think. I printed the missed call log that followed. A small constellation of insistence. I wrote a timeline in block letters down the margin. April, pressure to consolidate. June, check-ins about how you're sleeping. July 4th, gift plus whisper. July 5-6, labs, ledger, baseline. Next, attorney. I called my attorney's office and left a message that most people wouldn't understand. I need to talk irrevocable instruments, I said. Grandchild first provisions. I want to carve out one branch and protect the others. Urgent but not panicked. When I hang up from such calls, I always imagine how the words settle on the other end. I hoped mine landed like careful bricks, not flares. At 5, soup arrived with Michael and a girl pretending not to be hungry. We ate on the patio because Summer asked us to, because the sky was doing its quiet Arizona gold that convinces you the world is simpler than it is. Emma told me about a math problem shaped like a ladder against a wall. They want you to find the angle at the ground, she said. But it's a trick. The numbers don't line up unless you catch the missing length. Tricks are just facts wearing costumes, I said. Let's see it after bowls. Michael watched my face the way he watched students during tests. A kindness that doesn't crowd you. I saw the paper on your fridge, he said, voice neutral. Good, I said. That's why it's there. He nodded. I won't ask questions you haven't invited. I will say this. Emma is okay here. His eyes flicked toward the ledger's black spine on the far table and away again. We're okay here. After soup, the girl and I bent over the math. We drew a ladder and a wall and a ground that didn't trust either of them. She found the missing length like a woman pulling a nail in one smooth motion. See, she said, pleased. You just have to know where not to look first. When they left, the house held the kind of quiet that doesn't accuse you. I took my notebook to the living room and wrote a different ledger. Moral calculus. I will not put a woman in a cage if a door and a shame will work. I will not pretend nothing happened. I will not let her choices make a liar out of me. I will not trade Emma's safety for Claire's comfort. I will not ruin Michael's peace by dragging him into strategy until strategy is ready for daylight. There is a kind of arithmetic that doesn't use numbers. It uses thresholds. Bridges have them. Families do too. I drew a line across the page and wrote above it, do this now, and below it, do this later. Now, call attorney again at 8 a.m. for a same-week appointment. Prepare a written statement of facts for counsel. Inventory accounts and titles. Confirm beneficiary designations. Confirm that the house deed allows for a simple transfer into trust. Document all communications with Claire going forward. Later, decide whether to confront privately first or with a third party present. Decide whether the switch is necessary or an unneeded prop. Decide whether police ever enter the story. I went to my desk and began the statement of facts for my attorney as if I were writing a field report. Dated entries, names, times, no editorializing. The whisper at the birthday, the granddaughter's text. The labs, the April diner talk, the joint accounts, the word symbolic. I attached copies of what I had and a list of what I wanted. Irrevocable trust with clear successor trustees. Healthcare directives that keep hands that don't love you off your throat. A letter of wishes that says what the law can't. On the last line, I wrote the only sentence that didn't feel like paperwork. I want to protect my granddaughter's future without breaking my son's heart. I slept early, slept hard, slept like a woman who had finally put tools back on their hooks. At 7:59 a.m., I sat with the phone in my hand and watched the second hand like an enemy until it released 8 sound. The receptionist answered with a cheerfulness I believed and put me on hold in a way that didn't feel like exile. 2 minutes later, my attorney's assistant came on. "We had a cancellation," she said. "Can you be here at 9:30? "Yes," I said, as if my legs hadn't already stood. I showered, dressed, and looked like a witness who expects to be believed. I took the folder labeled case, the ledger, and the manila envelopes. I took the bottle too, sealed and bagged, because seeing an object next to a sentence changes how a room hears you. The law office sits over a bakery. The hallway always smells like sugar, pretending it's not dangerous. The receptionist nodded me toward the conference room, with the long table that makes people think better or worse of themselves, depending on the day. My attorney, sharp mind, soft hands, a voice that never rushes you toward the cliff, came in with a legal pad and a pen that made tiny crisp sounds when it moved. "Tell me the story from the beginning," she said. "I brought the beginning," I said, placing the ledger on the table and the reports on top. "The short version is April set the angle. July told me the load." She read the whisper in my notes and didn't react. Professionals don't give expressions away cheaply. She read Emma's text and closed her eyes for a moment. A private respect. She traced a finger down the lab report and underlined a chemical family without saying its name. She wrote chain of custody and underlined it twice. "This is what we're going to do," she said, and the "we" felt like a beam. "You trust. We're going to draft an irrevocable trust for your granddaughter. Tight. We're going to revise your will to reflect your actual intentions. We're going to set healthcare powers in a way that keeps decision-making with people who love you. We're going to create a letter for your primary care physician, stating your wishes in clear language. And we're going to file copies in places where clerks will find them, not hope they get found." "And Claire?" I asked. She placed her pen down, a small sound in a big room. "We can include conditional language. We can include nothing. We can include an alternate path back in, if she meets conditions you set and independent people verify. You're telling me you want to protect a girl without destroying a woman. The law is clumsy at that, but it can be taught." "I don't want to make a spectacle," I said, "but I won't keep this private if private means dangerous. I have a plan forming that involves daylight. A public setting can be a safety device," she said. "Not a show. A boundary with witnesses. We'll draft language for a controlled conversation if you need it. We'll also draft letters to institutions in case you want to make quiet changes with no conversation at all." She made a list that looked like mine, and then made it better. She asked about titles, deeds, beneficiaries. I had more answers than most women because I've always liked my papers straight. Where I didn't, she gave me words to use with banks and a sequence that made sense. "Do not tell her anything until you have documents executed and filed," she said. "The order matters." I looked at the bottle in its clear bag on the chair beside me. "I don't intend to drink this," I said, and the statement felt legal. "You intend to live," she said. "That's good law." We set the signing for the next afternoon, pending a notary and a witness or two who knew how to write their names. We set the language firm and plain. We set a path that led, if needed, to a conversation where I would lay down papers like steel and give my daughter one chance to put down the tools she'd picked up. By the time I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the sun had climbed to a height that made shadows honest. I held the folder under my arm like it could take a hit. A child came out of the bakery with a cookie larger than her hand and smiled at me like women my age are always on her side. I smiled back. She wasn't wrong. Back home, I placed the attorney's draft checklist on the table and slid my statement of facts across to meet it. The two edges lined up as if they had been cut for each other. I breathed once, the way you breathe before a weld. I texted Michael. I have an appointment tomorrow. Paperwork. Will you be my witness? Yes, he wrote. Say when and where. I'll send details, I said. Thank you, I texted Emma. Pancakes still on Saturday. Bring the hard problems. I've got a ladder one, she replied. It looks easy, but it's not. Those are my favorite kind, I said. When the house settled around me for the evening, the past and the present felt like two ends of a beam finally meeting at the right angle. April had tried to tip the structure one way. July had pushed back with numbers and signatures until the plumb line centered itself again. Tomorrow would be signatures and seals, witnesses, and the dry satisfaction of things done correctly. Soon after would come a different kind of room, with different witnesses, where a woman would be told what she had done and be offered a path out of it. Not mercy exactly, something older, something that keeps bridges standing and girls safe. I turned the bottle in its bag once, just enough to catch the lamp. Then I turned the lamp off. Paper has a sound when it's ready to become law. It whispers when you lift it. It answers when a pen presses down. I dressed like a woman who expects to be believed and carried my folder the way a welder carries a mask. Ordinary tool, essential shield. At 9:30 sharp, I was back in the conference room over the bakery. Michael sat at the far end with a quiet smile that didn't ask questions. Mrs. Chen came in 5 minutes later in a clean shirt, nodding once as if to say, I am merely a neighbor who signs things, which was perfect. The notary arranged her stamp and a square of blotter paper like a small ceremony. My attorney placed a stack in front of me and spoke in a voice built for bridges, the kind that carries weight without strain. First, she said, tapping the top document, the Irrevocable Education and Welfare Trust for Emma. She outlined it the way an engineer would sketch a span. Purpose, health, education, maintenance, and support. No sports cars disguised as scholarships. Trustee, an independent fiduciary first. Michael as trust protector with power to remove and replace for cause. Successes. If one fails, another steps in without drama. Spendthrift clause. Creditors and predators can't pry it open. No contest language. Anyone who challenges without good cause forfeits their share. Funding. Transfer on death instructions for accounts. A deed to move the house when I say so, or when I stop saying anything at all. She slid a single page across that wasn't part of the formal instrument. A letter of wishes. This frames intent without binding the trustee's hands, she said. My own words stared back at me in clean type. Scholarships before allowances. Books before toys. When in doubt, choose the thing that gives her more choices later. Not fewer now. Second, she said, your will. Clean, specific. Claire is not a beneficiary. She did not use the word disinherited as if it were a scar. She drafted it like a measurement. There is a clause that bars her from serving in any fiduciary role. There is an alternate path named private, not legal. Should you ever wish to supplement the trust with a separate letter later. She looked at me over the paper. You do not owe that letter to anyone. Third, she continued, durable power of attorney for finances. Springing, not immediate. Michael first, Mrs. Chen second, a professional third. Claire is excluded. She underlined excluded once with the tip of her pen. More gesture than mark. 4th, healthcare power of attorney. Michael first. Clear directives. HIPAA releases. A plain language note in your doctor's chart that no sedatives are to be administered without clinical indication, and a second signature. Copies will go to the clinic, the hospital network, and your safe deposit box. 5th, she said softer now. Security packet. Cover letters to banks with beneficiary designations, and a checklist for retitling the house if requested. And this, she added, tapping a thin envelope, is a 1-page controlled conversation framework. If you decide to meet with Claire in public, these are the sentences. Nothing more, nothing less. I read each line, not for surprises, but for precision. Dates, names, triggers, successor paths. All the parts people fight about when they are left loose. Nothing was loose. When I lifted the pen, my hand didn't shake. Sign here, the notary said, and the first page accepted my name without complaint. Michael watched my face, not the pen. Mrs. Chen's signature came behind mine like a brace behind a joist. The stamp sank and rose with that small, dignified thud only ink and authority can make. We moved through the stack like a careful crew. Trust, will, powers, releases, letters. Each signature was a quiet door closing where a draft had been, where language needed witnesses. Michael and Mrs. Chen wrote their names in steady strokes. Where law needed a seal, the stamp kissed the page and left a square of proof. When we finished, my attorney collected originals into a red folder and slid certified copies into a blue one. Red stays with me, she said. Blue rides with you. Scans will be in your secure portal before lunch. The bank packet is ready. The deed is ready if and when you want it. I'll handle accounts this afternoon, I said. The house can wait a day. Good, she said. Order matters. I paid her bill, not because the ritual mattered, but because I wanted the line item to become part of the paper trail. Professional services rendered, future secured. On the way out, the hallway smelled like sugar again. It made me think of icing. How it can hide flaws if you let it. How a good cake doesn't need it thick. At the bank, I sat with a woman who knew the difference between courtesy and thoroughness. We went account by account. Pay on death designations swung toward the trust, with each signature. Old automatic transfers no longer made sense. We switched them off. The clerk stamped a stack and slid me copies. You are very organized, she said. I wish my mother were like this. She didn't mean I wish she was dying. She meant, I wish no one would have to guess. Later? I nodded the way. Women nod when they recognize a sentence that's truer than it sounds. On the way home, I stopped at the clinic and handed Dr. Harrison's nurse the healthcare packet. We have it, she said, scanning the first page. We'll flag your chart and file copies with the hospital. She made a rectangle with her hands as if framing a photo. This is very clear. Clarity feels like oxygen after a room that's been closed too long. Back in the living room, I laid the blue folder beside the ledger. I added a new heading. Locks installed. Trust executed. Will revised. POAs signed. HIPAA on file. Bank designations updated. Attorney holds originals. Scans verified. I put check marks next to each line the way a foreman chalks a floor. Then I took the red folder's counterparts, the certified copies my attorney had indulged me with, and walked them to the safe deposit box. The vault door swallowed the echo of my steps. The envelope labeled Evidence. Do not discard, now had a neighbor. Instruments active. The two felt like bookends on a shelf that would not tip. When I came out into the afternoon, the sun had shifted from noon white to a warmer angle, the kind that puts truth in relief. I drove home the long way, past the Little League field, past the hardware store where the good hex keys hang, past the community center where Michael used to run book fairs. The hall's big room has windows high enough to pull light down like a rope, a decent place for a boundary. Back at the house, the bottle sat on its shelf in the den closet inside a clear bag. Evidence tag tucked under the knot. I took it down with the care you reserve for dangerous, useful things. On the kitchen counter, I set a second bottle beside it. The clean twin I'd bought as a prop I didn't plan to use. Side by side, they looked like an illusionist's setup. 2 rabbits, 1 hat. But this wasn't a trick. It was control. If I needed a pour that didn't endanger anyone while we spoke, I would have it. If I needed to watch a woman watch her plans soften under a room's bright light, I would have that too. I wrote a page I hoped I wouldn't need. Switch protocol. All pours from controlled bottle only. Cap the evidence bottle. Keep it out of reach and in sight. If confronted about the switch, use the sentence, "We're not here to test your heart. We're here to test your choices." If she refuses to meet without a drink, meeting is over. Then I folded the page and slid it into the case folder with the controlled conversation script my attorney had drafted. The sentences were short enough to fit on one breath. I have 2 independent lab reports confirming adulteration. I have witnesses and chain of custody. I have executed documents that protect the girl you love. You will never put me or anyone in this family at risk again. If you want a path back to decency, here are the conditions. If not, this is the end of it. Conditions. The word held steady in my mouth like the right size of wrench. I wrote them on a card. Not for her, for me. Truth. A written admission delivered to my attorney. Treatment. A program verified by someone who has never owed her a favor. Time, 1 year without lies. Distance. No access to my home or person without Michael present until the year is done. Notice what wasn't on the list. Money. Paper can carry help. It cannot carry love where none is sent. At 4, Michael texted. All done. All locked. I answered, "Thank you for standing with me." Always. He wrote, "Emma is making a list of pancake toppings. It's not short." Good. I typed. Let her bring the whole grocery. By 7, the summer light thinned and the neighborhood began its evening chorus. Dogs negotiating fences, a mower finishing a last strip, someone testing a song too loud for the hour. I set the table the way Robert liked it, without thinking, then undid 1 plate and laughed. Old habits love you so much, they forget you've changed. I took the controlled conversation script and walked it aloud in the living room. I timed the sentences to the length of my breath. When a sentence wobbled, I cut it until it didn't. I practiced the silence after each line too, because silence is a tool women forget to use. I thought about calling Claire then and there. I didn't. Paper first, places second, people last. At 9, my attorney texted. Deed ready when you are. Scans uploaded. Sleep. I wrote, soon. Thank you. And set the phone face down. In bed, the house felt different, not safer. Safety is a story people tell to get to sleep. But steadier. The ledger on the nightstand had a new weight, because the future had been told where to go and who to guard. I slept through the first part of the night like a woman whose tools are hung. Woke once around 2 out of habit. Went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water I watched myself drink. In the morning, I did the small errands plans actually require. I ordered a bound book from the print shop, tabbed with plastic covers so the reports and powers and letters wouldn't fray. I bought a new fireproof pouch for the case folder. I wrote a short note to Dr. Harrison thanking her for the prompt signatures and tucked a copy of the directives in a stamped envelope to her office. Set 2 chairs in the den where the afternoon light is, bright and shows people as they are. Then I wrote the invitation. It wasn't flowery. It wasn't bait. It was a square of daylight offered precisely. Claire, we will meet at Sunnydale Community Center, Room B, tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. I will have papers. There will be witnesses in the building, not on our chairs. You will not bring gifts or drinks. You will bring only yourself. If you choose not to come, that is a choice. I will proceed accordingly. Mom, I did not text it. I printed it, sealed it, and drove it to her door. I placed the envelope under the mat where a camera would see a hand that wasn't sneaking. I rang the bell. I didn't wait. At home, I added one more entry to the ledger. July 7th, 11:05 a.m. Path fixed. Guardrails up. I looked at the 2 bottles again, one labeled by a lab, one labeled by my own caution. I put the safe one in a bag that held nothing else, set the bag by the door and stepped back. The den looked like a stage, not because it invited drama, but because it was clean and ready. The kitchen was clean. The mind was clean. My phone buzzed at 1:14. Claire. Got your note. That's dramatic, Mom. We're family. We can talk at the house. Community Center, 5:30. I wrote. Or not at all. Dots. Fine. But this is ridiculous. I was trying to be nice with that bottle. I didn't let the sentence finish its lie. 5:30. I sent again and put the phone screen down on the counter. After a moment, the phone vibrated with a single thumbs up that felt like a small door closing. I went to the garage and took down the folding table I use when the family gets bigger than the dining room. I wiped it for no reason except that clean surfaces keep people honest. I checked the chair legs. I set a glass on the table and a pitcher of water within reach. On the mantel, I placed the bound book with its tabs. Trust, Will, Labs, Letters, Powers. A quiet spine that could carry a bridge. When the house was as ready as a room can be for a woman to choose herself, I walked outside and sat on the back steps. The mesquite threw a net of shade across the yard. Somewhere a hammer pinged, a sound that always makes me less alone. I thought of the tree house Claire and I had built, crooked, and called a castle. I tried to remember if we'd ever corrected its lean, or if we'd merely lived with it, because neither of us wanted to admit the posts weren't plumb. You can live with a lean until the day you can't. I stood, went inside, and closed the evidence bottle's bag. I put it back in the safe, turned the key, and tugged once. Nothing moved that wasn't supposed to. On the counter, the safe bottle waited in its plain brown bag. Unremarkable, ordinary, harmless as props go. I hoped I wouldn't even unscrew it. I hoped the conversation would hold on paper, in bright light, with water in the glasses, and witnesses in the building, and a girl's future set high, where dirty hands can't reach. I wrote one last card, and put it in my pocket. Breathe. Short sentences. Paper on the table. If she lies, end it. If she tells the truth, begin again with conditions. Evening would come soon enough. Before it did, I made myself a sandwich, cut it in 2, ate both halves without tasting them, and washed the plate. The house was ready. The plan was ready. The woman was as ready as a woman gets. Tomorrow would not be a spectacle. It would be a load test. And the structure, finally, was designed to hold. Morning arrived like a level placed on a beam, bubble-centered. I ate toast I could name, drank water I poured myself, and went room by room with the quiet purpose of a woman who knows which screws to check. At 10, I called Sunnydale Community Center. The manager, a woman named Ellen who ran the place like a good foreman, answered on the second ring. I need a small room at 5:30, I said. Door open. Nothing fancy. I'd also like a staff member at the desk until 6, moi. We can do that, she said. Chess club meets in the hall at 5, and there's a blood drive setting up in the atrium. People will be around. Perfect, I said. We'll be in room B. If voices rise, I'll wave. She laughed once, the I've seen worse kind, and put my name on the board. I walked the plan again. Paper first, places second, people last. I tucked the bound book into the fireproof pouch with the lab reports, powers, and the controlled conversation script. I added the small index card from my pocket. Breathe. Short sentences. Paper on the table. I set my watch 5 minutes fast and moved it back just to prove to my hands who was in charge. At noon, I ate a sandwich I could have made in a storm. At 1, I stood in the den with the 2 bottles like a magician who hates tricks. The evidence bottle back in the safe where it belonged. Tagged and still. The clean twin in a brown bag by the door. A prop I prayed would stay a prop. At 3, Michael texted. I'll be in the building at 5. I won't hover. I'll sit with the chess people. Good. I wrote. Bring Mrs. Chen if she's willing. 2 minutes later. She says she'll drop by the library box out front around 5:20, which means she'll be nearby. At 4, my attorney called to ask one question. No one asks when they're only thinking like lawyers. Do you want me there? She said. I want this to be family, I said. With daylight. If it tips, I'll call. Then I'll keep my phone on, she said. Remember, don't negotiate with yourself. I'll use short sentences, I said, and we hung up like adults. By 5, I was dressed like a woman who expects to be believed. The pouch under my arm had the easy weight of tools. I took the brown bag because control is a virtue, locked the house, and drove to the center. Inside, the atrium smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old basketball. The blood drive had a neat row of cots and a cooler sweating quietly in a corner. In the big hall, chessboards were open like maps, white and black towns facing each other without malice. I saw Michael at a side table, his attention a soft circle around Emma's empty seat. He didn't wave. Good. We had agreed on daylight, not spectacle. Room B was small and square. White walls, laminate table, 2 chairs that would not squeak. I set the pouch in the center, opened it, and laid the bound book face up. I placed a pitcher of water and 2 paper cups a hand's reach away. I put the brown bag on the floor by my chair. I left the door open exactly the width of a paperback. Claire arrived at 5:31, which was close enough to on time to count as courtesy in her mind. She wore a blouse that cost more than her rent used to, and a smile that had done good work over the years. She held her hands out as if the room might hug her. Mom, she said, stepping in, glancing at the open door, recalculating. This is dramatic. You got my note, I said. Sit, she sat. Her eyes found the book, then the water, then the door again. She took in the building like a burglar learning the alarms. She didn't notice Michael in the distance, or Mrs. Chen pretending to argue about a Sicilian defense at the second board. She did notice the brown bag by my chair and filed it. I don't know what this is, she said. This is short, I said. I'll speak. You'll listen. Then you'll make a choice. She leaned back. You don't have to talk to me like I'm a... Short sentences, I said, and set the script on the table without turning it toward her. I have 2 independent lab reports confirming adulteration. I slid the top tab, labs, open, and let the blue seals catch her eye. She swallowed. Adulteration of what? Of the whiskey you gifted me, I said. Benzodiazepine class. Documented chain of custody. I slid the copies of the forms with Mrs. Chen's signature to the edge of the book, so she couldn't pretend she didn't see them. She smiled the way women smile when they're choosing a path. You think Mom, come on. You really think I have witnesses, I said. And chain of custody. She glanced toward the door again. You brought who? Lawyers? Cops? Michael? Witnesses are in the building, I said. Not on these chairs. She reached for indignation and found it wouldn't start. She adjusted. Well, there must be some mistake. I bought you a nice bottle. The woman at the shop. We'll get to that, I said. Next. I have executed documents that protect the girl you love. I flipped the trust tab. Let her read the title. Irrevocable Education and Welfare Trust. And the first paragraph where Emma's name sat like a cornerstone. She read more words than she meant to. You cut me out, she said, finding a shape. You cut your own daughter out. I set the future where it belongs, I said, with the only person at this table who warned me. Her mouth twitched. She misunderstood. She's a kid. She told the truth, I said. She'll sleep again soon. I was trying to be nice, she said, lowering her voice to something like hurt. A birthday gift. You make it into a crime. Do you hear how that sounds? To your own daughter? I let the silence work a second. You whispered, "Don't choke on it," at the handoff. I said. You suggested I open it when I was alone. A lab says what your smile won't. We are not debating the peak on a chart. We are deciding what kind of woman you will be after today. Her eyes flicked to the door. So that's it. You want me to confess to something I didn't do in a public building? You want a show? I want a boundary with witnesses, I said. I want to keep my heart beating, and I want you to walk out of here with the one path back to decency. She laughed, a short, bright sound that didn't belong to the room. Path back? Mom, I manage. I take care of... You will never put me or anyone in this family at risk again, I said. If you want a path back, here are the conditions. Always with the conditions, she said, settling into the role of woman talked down to. Fine, entertain me. Truth, I said. A written admission delivered to my attorney. Treatment, verified by people you don't choose. Time, 1 year without lies. Distance, no access to me or my house without Michael present until the year is done. She stared, the smile sliding off like a sticker that found a clean surface. You're serious? As a bridge over a river, I said. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. Or what? Or this moves forward without you, I said. The papers are already filed. The trust is already funded. The doctors already have my directives. The banks already have their orders, she shook her head. A little girl who's found the candy jar empty. You do this to your daughter? I'm doing this for my granddaughter, I said. And for Michael. And for me. She sat back. The first flush of anger rose and she let it. You always liked rules more than people. You always liked work more than your family. You liked the parts of family that paid bills, I said. And you called the rest symbolic. She flinched like I'd named a private shame. This is insane, she said, choosing the word angry women choose when proof corners them. You know what this looks like? It looks like you're getting senile. It looks like Michael is whispering in your ear. It looks like... Claire, I said, as patient as I could be and still be a woman. Look at me. She did. She saw eyes that weren't confused. She found no wobble there. You brought a bottle, I said, nodding at the bag she'd slid under her chair on the way in. She had tucked it there like a smuggled thought. She eased it out with 2 fingers, slow. It's a joke, she said too fast. I was going to... I thought... I don't know what I thought. We toast. Start over. You were told not to bring drinks, I said. I reached for the brown bag by my chair and set it on the table, opened it, and let the clean-sealed twin look her in the face. If there is to be a pour in this room, it comes from here. But hear me, no one is drinking. We're not here to test your heart. We're here to test your choices. She stared at the caps. She read the age statement with her eyes, and the plan with her jaw. You think I'd try something here? She said. With people outside? I think women who lean on momentum make mistakes in bright rooms, I said. And I like bright rooms. She took a breath, held it, let it out through her nose. This is humiliating, she said. You want me to say I did something I didn't do so you can feel like a hero in front of your little committee? I want you to stop, I said. And I want proof you intend to stop. Paper beats promises. She smiled again, but it didn't land. You set this up like a courtroom, she said. But you forgot the jury. Chess club, I said, nodding toward the hall. Blood drive. Ellen at the desk. A neighbor by the little library box. They're not a jury. They're the town. And they're better at measuring character than any 12 strangers. She weighed that. Then she did the thing she's always done when cornered. She reached for charm like a rope swing over water. Mom, she said, voice softer, eyes wide with the girl she used to be. I love you. I brought you something nice. You've built this whole fortress out of a misunderstanding. Let's go to dinner, just us. We'll laugh about this one day. Short sentences, I said, more to myself than to her. I poured a finger from the clean bottle into a paper cup and an identical pour into a second cup. I set both between us. The room smelled like oak and 100 toasts I wasn't going to make. "There," I said. "Now you don't have to wonder which bottle is which. They are both safe. We will not drink either." She stared at the cups like they were a test she hadn't studied for. "You're insane," she said again, but quiet now, almost reverent. "You planned a switch." "I planned options," I said. "And because I will not let you steer the moment." She reached for a cup. I tapped the lip of mine with a finger. "Don't," I said. "You don't get to hold liquids in this room. You get to hold responsibility." Her hand stopped. She set her hand flat on the table instead and studied the wood grain like she might learn its language. When she spoke, she was careful. "What if I don't sign anything? What if I don't write your little confession? What if I walk out?" "Then you walk out," I said. "And this goes daylight in a different way. We will use larger rooms. We will use more witnesses. We will not use a court unless we must. But we will not go back to whispers." She swallowed, and for a moment I saw it. The little impulse that powered the whisper on my patio. The calculation. The decision no one else had seen until now. She smoothed it away with a palm and tried a new angle. "You think Emma needs your money?" she said, aiming at the girl because she couldn't aim at me. "She needs a mother. She has one," I said. "She warned me. That's mother work." She laughed once and looked sick with it. "And Michael, he's in on this. He's always been—" "Stop," I said. And when I said it, the air shifted. "You will not say his name like that in front of me again." She looked at the door as if it had moved. It had not. It was still a paperback wide. The hall's noise. A soft rope between this room and the world. Outside, a chess piece clicked. In the atrium, a blood pressure cuff sighed. "Okay," she said, and her voice changed. Not softer, just lower. "What does your path look like if I say yes?" I slid a single sheet across the table. 1 page, 4 lines. It was a statement, not a confession. It locked only the mechanisms that mattered. I acknowledged that a beverage I gifted was found adulterated by independent labs. I will not prepare or provide any consumables to my mother now or in the future. I agree to seek evaluation and follow treatment recommendations by a provider selected by attorney's name. I agree to no unaccompanied visits for 1 year. I agree to respect the integrity of the trust. "You sign," I said. "We file, you start. We meet with the provider. We schedule check-ins. You bring a year of good days. At the end, we revisit the letter that doesn't exist yet." "And if I don't?" she asked. "Then you'll hear what you've done in a room with more eyes," I said. "Not to punish you, to prevent you." She sat very still, like a deer in a neighbor's yard that hopes the human is dumb. I knew the stillness. It meant, buy time, find a gap. She looked at the cups. She looked at the book. She looked at me. She reached into her pocket, took out her phone, and set it face down on the table like a little flag. "Can I at least call Dad?" She said, cheap and automatic. A reflex 20 years out of date. "Robert's not taking calls," I said. "I am." She laughed and it turned into a sound she didn't intend. She picked up the pen. She held it over the line the way a woman holds a torch near a weld, testing heat. "Say it," she said, not looking up. "Say the sentence I need to hear." "We solve problems before they break," I said. "You can be the woman who helps fix one, or you can be the woman who makes it worse. That's the whole story. That's all the law, all the love, all the memory. Choose." She looked up. The girl I built a crooked castle with stood there a moment, eyes clear and 20 years back. Then the woman who bought a bottle spoke through her. "You'd ruin me in front of the town," she said, half awe, half dare. "I'll repair what you broke in front of the town," I said. "If you make me." She set the pen down. "I need air," she said. "You can have air," I said. "Not a drink." She stood, pocketed her phone, and walked to the door. She looked out. Chess pieces clicked. Ellen at the desk joked with a nurse. Michael leaned over a board he wasn't really studying. Mrs. Chen pretended to squint at a knight. Claire turned back, set her hand on the doorframe, and smiled a smile with no home in it. "Let's make it a real conversation," she said. "Come out here with your papers. Let's tell our little audience your story." "That's not what I invited," I said, standing anyway. "But I don't mind light." She stepped into the hall first, and for a flicker of a second, I saw the old trick in motion. Widen the room, muddy the lines, perform. I picked up the bound book, slid the signed or not sheet inside its cover, left the cups on the table like two things we were done with, and followed her. We stopped just outside room B, under the high windows where the evening poured itself down the wall in a clean rectangle. She turned so the hall could see her profile, and not her face. "Performance loves an angle. Everyone," she said loud enough for the nearest 3 tables to look up and then look down. Polite. "My mom has something to announce." Ellen looked over from the desk. Mrs. Chen stood and adjusted her glasses. Michael did not move, which is a kind of mercy. "Not an announcement," I said, my voice the size of the room. "A boundary." I set the book on the nearest vacant table, opened to labs, and tapped the blue seal with one finger so the sound landed. "We'll do this carefully." Claire spread her hands, eyes bright, ready to wrestle truth in front of witnesses and call it theater. "Ellen," I said, not taking my eyes off my daughter, "may I borrow your staff room for 2 signatures with you as a witness?" "You can borrow my name for a minute," she said, coming around the desk. Her shoes made honest sounds on the floor. "Thank you," I said. Claire's smile flashed panic and tried to hide it. "Mom, short sentences," I said, and laid my palm flat on the blue seal until it cooled. We had stepped into daylight. The load test had started. The structure held. Ellen led us 3 doors down to a staff room with a window that faced the atrium. Daylight pulled on the linoleum, a corkboard and a calendar, a metal table that believed in straight lines. She stood by the door with a clipboard like a referee who doesn't blow the whistle unless it matters. "We'll keep the door open," she said. "Halfway." "Good," I said. Claire hovered just inside, measuring angles, hunting for shadows, finding none. Her showman's smile had nowhere to root. She looked younger and older at once, like 2 lives arguing about which one she should be living. I put the bound book on the table and opened to labs again. I set the single page, 4 lines, signature block beside it. My pen clicked once. "Honest sound. This is the statement," I said. "Short, accurate. It doesn't ask you to write your soul. It asks you to stop." Ellen approached the table far enough to see the page, not close enough to read guilt like a novel. She nodded to show she could witness a signature and still sleep later. Claire tried a smaller voice. "Mom, imagine how this looks to her." She tipped her chin toward Ellen as if she were the audience she could still win. "It looks like daylight," I said. She picked up the paper. The sentence about no unaccompanied visits made her mouth tighten. The sentence about not providing consumables made her eyes go flat, as if a small switch in her head threw itself and killed the stage lights. "This ruins me," she said. "This prevents you," I said. "There's a difference." She set the page down, picked it up again, held it at the corner like a woman testing if glue had set. "You really think a lab report and a few signatures make you right? I think 2 labs, a witness, a doctor, a trust, a will, 2 banks, and a community center make me steady," I said. "The right will take more days." She looked at Ellen. "Do you know what she's accusing me of?" "I know what she's protecting," Ellen said. "My job today is eyes and ink." For a moment she smiled at that. Admiration for a clean job well done. It passed. She looked through the window at the chessboards, the small motions of ordinary mercy. Mrs. Chen stood up at the second table and stretched the way a woman stretches when she's been sitting too long. She did not look in at us. That restraint did more work than any sermon. Claire tapped the page with her middle finger to the beat of her own indecision. "This is humiliating," she said again. Softer now, naming the thing keeping her from the pen. "You could have done this at the house." "You asked for the house when you needed dark corners," I said. "We're not doing corners anymore." She laughed once, a bright mistake. "You think very well of yourself." "I think well of the girl who warned me," I said. "And of the son who won't ask me questions I haven't invited. And of the neighbor who showed up with a signature. And of this room that doesn't care about our family myths." She looked up at the ceiling as if there might be an answer written there. When none fell, she lowered her eyes to the lines that asked exactly what they asked and nothing more. "What happens after I sign?" she asked. "You go home," I said. "Tomorrow my attorney calls the provider. You go where she tells you. You show up. You keep showing up. You don't text me at night. You don't come to my door alone. You don't bring gifts. You do not say Michael's name with blame in your mouth. A year of boring days measured by someone who doesn't need you to like them. And if I don't sign, then this goes bigger," I said. "Not cops unless we must, but daylight. Letters to institutions. Conversations you can't charm. You will become a woman the town squints at. Or you can become a woman the town nods at, because she did the hard thing." She held the pen over the page and didn't move. The quiet stretched, not like a threat, like a plank. Walk it or don't. I didn't fill it for her. Ellen shifted her weight, patient. In the window, someone castled neatly. Queen tucked away behind a wall of pawns. Good form. Claire put the pen down. "Say the line again," she said. Eyes on the paper. "We solve problems before they break," I said. She picked up the pen and signed her first name like a girl late to class. Her last name like a woman who still wanted to be seen. She dated it. The angle of the 7 looked like it always had, even on permission slips. Ellen stepped forward, watched the ink dry, wrote her name and the time with an even hand. "There," she said. "That is the thing that happened." Claire let out a breath she'd been holding for a year. She swayed just a degree, the way a post sways before a brace finds it. She sat. "I want my copy," she said to the table. "You'll get one," I said. I slid the page into a clear sleeve as if it were a fragile photograph and added it to the case section. "You'll also get a call tomorrow with a time and an address. You'll go. If you flinch, I pull daylight harder." She nodded without enthusiasm. "Am I cut off?" "You're not entitled," I said. "You're not invited without Michael. You're not the target of anything but a boundary." She stared past me. "She told you?" she whispered. And I knew which she meant. "She told me," I said. "She did the right thing. She ruined me," she said. But the words were fragile, not angry. "She saved me," I said. "And maybe you, depending on what you do next." She rubbed her jaw the way she does when a plan rubs the wrong way against the grain. "I don't know if I can do a year." "You can do one day," I said. "Enough of those. You'll have a pile." She laughed once, honest. "You and your piles. They hold," I said. I closed the book. The click of the elastic around the cover sounded like a clasp. "We're done here." She stood without looking at Ellen, and that told me she had learned a shard of something. At the door, she paused. "Can I see her?" she asked, not saying Emma's name, as if the name were a door she'd lost the key to. "Not yet," I said. "In time, with witnesses, after a start." She nodded as if a judge had given her a sentence shorter than the maximum. We stepped back into the hall. The chessboards murmured. The blood drive's cooler dripped discreetly. Michael stood up and then sat back down, which is better than applause. Claire looked at him and then away, as if bright light forced her to blink. She put a hand in her pocket, found nothing useful there, took it out again. She turned toward the exit. At the door, she looked over her shoulder with the same expression she wore the day we realized the castle leaned. "You could have just asked me to be better," she said. "I did," I said. With paper, she left. The door let her go and swung back to its resting place as if nothing had happened, which is one way of telling the truth. Mrs. Chen approached with the amble of a woman in no hurry to be thanked. "Weather held," she said, and shook my hand like a project finished on schedule. "Thank you," I said, "for seeing and not seeing." "My pleasure," she said. "I'll be home if ink needs more eyes." She tipped her head to Michael, who tipped his back, and she left the way neighbors do, like a blessing you don't want to owe and do. Ellen walked over, wiped an invisible smudge from the counter with the side of her hand. "We keep the boring kind of drama around here," she said. "You did it right." "I hope so," I said. "Paper's heavy for a reason," she said, and went back to her desk. Michael stood in front of me, not touching me yet. "How is your voice?" he asked. "Short," I said. "Good," he said. "Do you want soup or quiet?" "Quiet now," I said. "Soup tomorrow." We walked out together. The sun had become evening, long shadows arguing gently with the sidewalk. In the parking lot, a kid hopped a painted line like it was a river she dared herself to clear. She cleared it. She looked back to see if anyone had seen. We had. At home, I put the signed page in the safe deposit packet, then made a second copy for the steel box. Redundancy is love wearing a clipboard. I texted my attorney a photograph of the signature with a single line. "Executed. Witness. Ellen, last name. Sunnydale Community Center." A minute later, she replied, "Well done. Provider at 9 a.m. tomorrow can hold a slot." I set the bound book on the mantel because it had earned a brief visible life. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and watched the light move across the old wood. No triumphant music played. No angels signed off. A room held steady because it was designed to. At 8, Emma texted a photograph of a pancake list with blueberries, underlined 3 times, and whipped cream with 2 question marks. "Approved," I wrote. "Bring the hard problem, too." "It's a latter one," she replied, but meaner. "We'll build the ground first," I wrote. "See you at 9. Michael sent a separate message. She left without a scene. She looked small. "She'll look different if she does days in a row," I wrote. "I won't watch closely. I'll watch correctly." After the house went quiet, I walked to the den closet and took down the brown bag with the clean bottle. I set it on the counter and looked at it the way you look at a tool you didn't have to use. I wrote a label for the bag anyway. Prop. Retired. I put it high behind the flower where harmless things belong. The evidence bottle stayed where it should stay. Tagged, sealed, speaking only when asked. I slipped the signature copy into the case folder, closed it, and felt the little pull of the clasp, like a heartbeat steadying. I slept like a woman who had carried something heavy to where it belonged, and set it down without dropping it. In the morning, the world kept being itself. The print shop called to say the tabs looked sharp. The clinic confirmed my directives were in the right places. The attorney sent a calendar invite for a 6-week check-in, labeled Boring Day. Pancakes came with blueberries and a math problem that did in fact hide its meanness. Emma drew the ladder, the wall, the slick patch where girls fall, if they don't account for angles. We found the missing length together. She grinned like a girl who sees the city she'll build one day. "Grandma," she said, more serious now than Saturday requires. "Are we okay?" "We're steady," I said. "Steady is better than okay." "Mom said you made rules." "I made guardrails," I said. "They keep people on the road." She nodded the way girls do when the metaphor holds. She ate 3 pancakes and suggested a 4th. We negotiated like diplomats and settled on half. The weeks that followed didn't belong to drama. They belonged to form. A provider's office with carpet that forgives shoes, appointments kept or not. A ledger with new headings, attendance, compliance, No unaccompanied visits. Obeyed or tested. My phone stayed quiet most nights. When it didn't, silence answered for me. People in town didn't talk because they didn't need to. They nodded to me the way you nod to a bridge you drive over every day and forget to. Thank Ellen waved once from across a farmer's market and didn't cross the space. Mrs. Chen left a bag of tomatoes on my steps with a note that said, "For the ledger of good things," on a Thursday. Michael stood in my living room and read the trust again all the way through, lips moving slightly, like an old habit of prayer. "Books before toys," he said, smiling. "She'll hate you, and then she'll thank you." "She can do both," I said. We didn't have a second confrontation. We had a series of small, uninteresting days. That's what safety looks like in real time. Paper and appointments, lists and locks, short sentences, water in the glass. The girls laugh in the yard as it finds its old ease. One afternoon, alone on the patio, I turned my wedding band with my thumb and said Robert's name into the air, the way you say level to a bubble. Checking. The mesquite held itself up without complaint. Somewhere a hammer pinged. The house hummed at the quiet pitch of a machine that's been maintained. In the den, the bound book kept its place a while longer before I filed it. The mantel looked better without it. The room did too. Dignity is not a document. It's the space you get back when the documents have done their work. On the last page of the ledger, I wrote a final entry in the same steady hand I'd used on the first. August 18th. Outcome. Trust in place. Girl safe. Son steady. Neighbor thanked. Staff witness appreciated. Daughter pending with conditions. Me. Alive. Unbroken. Then I added the only sentence that still needed saying. We solve problems before they break. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.